and welcome back to the Reapers. So we're looking at our Mig-21 today and setting up the HOTAS controls. Okay, so I'm going to go over how I set the controls up for my HOTAS. The HOTAS I use is a Cytec X56 Rhino. The one you will have will probably be different, but it will be the same in general layout. It'll have buttons roughly in the same place. So as I go through, I'll describe where I'm assigning the different controls to the various buttons on the joystick, on the HOTAS, and then you can do the same if you want. If you end up watching the tutorials that we do, then it will be beneficial if you have the same controls set up. So it's just prudent to point out that if you own many modules, like me, then what you want to do is when you're setting up certain controls, you want to keep them as universal as possible across the different aircraft. So if you've got a control for wheel brakes or something, then you want to have that same control for wheel brakes for all of the different planes to keep things as similar as possible. Okay, right, let's get started with setting up the controls. So we're going to go to Options from Main Menu, Controls, and we're going to click on this box here, go down to the Mig-21. There he is. Okay, now I'll explain this quickly. This column here is the action, and there are literally hundreds of them. Now, I'm not going to bind hundreds of them. I'm just going to bind the few that you need, the skeleton set basically, the few that you need to basically take off, fire all your weapons, and do your basic landing and stuff like that. If you want to add any more at the end of that, then that's fine. So there's the action. Here's the category that the action is in. Here is the keyboard command that it is currently bound to. Here is the left HOTAS, or the thrust stick side of the HOTAS command that's bound to that action. And here is the right side of the HOTAS, the control stick side that's bound to that action. So we're going to start with that box, this box here, at axis commands, as I always start. Now I've already got my commands set, my controls set, because I've flown the plane before, so we're just going to essentially just tape over them, okay? We're going to start with zoom view. This allows you to zoom in and zoom out when you're flying. It's something you will need to be able to look down at objects on the ground or in the air, etc. Okay, we're going to go on the left side of the HOTAS. For this, I've got a turny knob on the top right of my thrust stick. I'm going to double click with the mouse there. I'm going to turn the knob fully right then left, and you can see it's picked it up as Joy Z. Okay, and then we can test it by moving it, turning the knob, and it works fine. Next, we're going to go thrust. It's a one-engined aircraft, so we just got one box to fill out. We're going to double click in this box here, so it's the left HOTAS. We're going to move the thrust lever fully forward, then backwards. Okay, test it. Lovely, and that's that done. Next, we're going to go for the rudder, and we're going to move over to the right side of the HOTAS, the control stick. Okay. We're going to double click there. Now you may use pedals for this, in fact you probably will. I can't use pedals, so I've got the twist grip on my joystick, so I'm going to twist it left, twist it right, and it's picked it up, okay? And now with this joystick, axis tend to get a bit worn out, so what we're going to do is axis tune here. And the first thing you can see is that the red dot, movement dot, is outside of that black square, and outside of the center basically, where it stays in neutral position. So what we want to do is go to this here and add some dead zone until that red dot is in a flat area. So that means that when the joystick is in neutral position, it won't be giving any left or right inputs to the rudder, and it's just like that because it's an old stick and it's a bit worn out. Okay. As well as that, I like to add some curvature. I just keep it nice and simple. I like to add 25 curvature. It's just what I'm used to for all of my planes. And what that does is it changes the input curve so that you get more resolution and movement around the small movement of the stick and less around the large movement. It gives you a bit more fine control basically, and it's something you'll want to do, otherwise it'll be very difficult to fly. Okay, similar thing for the roll. Double click, move joystick left, move right. Okay, test it. Okay, axis tune. The dead zone is fine because the dot is right in the center. That's fine. We're going to add our usual curvature of 25. Lovely. And pitch. Double click. Stick forwards. Stick back. Okay. Test. Tune. That is, I think it's in the center. Is it in the center? No, so we've had to add a little bit of dead zone there for the pitch because, again, it's just a worn-out stick, basically. It doesn't quite center right. And let's add a little bit of curvature of 25. Bosh. Okay. Right, that's the axis done. Now let's move on to the more kind of binary switches and stuff. So we're going to start on the left side of the HOTAS for this. And we're going to go to search, and we're going to search various commands out. So what have we got on this? I always have the air brakes. So let's search air brake. There it is. There's only one command for it because it's like a toggle on or off. I've got a two-way switch on this left HOTAS here that I always use as my air brakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the downwards option and the upwards option for this toggle, because I'm used to pressing down and up on this toggle, so that means both of those down and up movements will trigger the on or off toggle. Okay. Next, I want my flaps. Again, it's a two-way trigger on the bottom, two-way switch on the right-hand side of the thrust stick. So all I'm interested in is flaps up or down. You can do flaps 45 and 25. In fact, I will do that. Thinking about it, I'm going to add that. So flaps down is the downward switch. Flaps up is the upward part of that switch, and it is actually a 4-part switch this is. So I can go forwards on this switch to add flaps 45. So I can do 45 down and up. Okay, that's that done. That's pretty much the left HOTAS done, except I want to add cheat. I want to add auto start. It's very useful to have. A lot of people don't like it, but that's okay. Auto start procedure. So I'm going to have it with an iron switch at the top right of the base of the left HOTAS, and I'm going to have start and there stop. Okay, so that's the left HOTAS done. So let's move on to the right HOTAS. So let's delete that there. First thing we'll do is the main trigger. I believe it's called fire guns. There it is, fire gun. So we're over to the right HOTAS here. Double click, pull the trigger, and that's that one done. Next is the second trigger, which is going to release the bombs, and I believe it's release weapon. Maybe not. How about weapon release? Come on. There he is. Weapon release. Double click on that. Press the trigger 2. Okay. And the next thing we want is I've got a button at the top of this control stick, which I use for locking onto the radar for all of my aircraft. So let's go and find that. It's going to be lock on. Let's try that. Target lock on. Double click there, and our usual target lock on button at the top there. Okay. Super. Now I've got 3 times 4-way hat switches on top of this stick. So let's start doing them. First is the trim, the one that I use, the hat switch that I use for trim. So let's type trim in here. So let's go trim down on the down movement of that switch, and up on the up movement of that switch. Now notice in the MiG-21 we don't have any left or right trim, any roll or rudder trim, which is weird. I have no idea what that is. If anyone knows what that is, let me know. But it's just weird. But that's just how it is. So I've got a left and right ability of this hat switch I can still use, and so I'm going to use that as weapon change, which I'll show you why in a second. Just got to remember what it is. It's weapon previous. No, let's try it. Previous. There it is. So you can select previous or next weapon. Okay, and that is on the plane. There's like a toggle switch, which switches to about 10 different stations, and you need to use that in combat. And it's quite hard to click on with your mouse. So it's nice to have a next and a previous selector. For that switch, for that knob, if you like, on the control stick. So I'm going to go weapon previous there. So that's the left side of the trim control, trim hat switch. And let's see if I can get. I'm guessing the other one is next. There it is. And that's going to be the right side of that normal trim control hat switch. So that's that hat switch done. Okay. The next one. On the left of the top of the stick, we're going to use as the ASP. So the ASP is like kind of what I call a gun sight. It's in the middle of the HUD, and there is lots of things you need to set up. You need to change it between guns and missiles and gyro and fixed and stuff like that. It's a four-way hat switch I've got to use, which I'd usually use as my sensor select on various other aircraft. So it's the closest thing we've got to sensor select on the MiG-21. So we're going to have auto manual, and we're going to set that up to right of my sensor control hat switch. Gyro missiles, I'm going to select to down on my sensor control hat switch. Gun missile rockets, I'm going to set to left on the hat switch, and on the bottom of the hat switch I'm going to set to shooting bombardment. Okay, it's not buggered that up, haven't I? You monkey. I meant to say shooting bombardment was up. Okay, right, and those aren't hard set really. You can change them about if you like, if you prefer other options, but I found those the most useful, and we'll go through in the tutorials how to use them. Okay, so that is that. One more four-way hat switch to do, and that is our hat switch we use in our aircraft for the TDC, the Target Designator Controller. Now we haven't got left and right, we've only got up and down in the MiG because it's a pretty simple arse radar. So we're going to go TDC range, pipper scan, up and down. So up, it's going to be the up on that four-way switch, and down, out is the down on that four-way switch. Okay, it's going to allow us to change our TDC cursor on the radar without going off HOTAS, which leaves the left and right still of that four-way switch, and we're going to use that for our radar. We're going to have radar, here they are. The most useful ones are radar off and radar standby that you're going to be using in combat. They're little switches down at the bottom right, and you can press the switches with the mouse, but it can be a little bit fiddly. You can click it the wrong way or click the wrong switch, so I like to have it here. Okay, so I'm going to have radar on as left on this four-way switch, and radar standby on the right side. Okay, right, so that's the three four-way switches. You'll probably have something similar on your HOTAS. Okay, just a few more switches to do on this right HOTAS. So next we're going to have wheel brake. There he is at the front of the control stick. It's the one I use always for my wheel brake. Okay. Next is a control I actually use usually for nose wheel steering, but this does not have nose wheel steering in this aircraft. So we're going to put another useful command instead. Emergency start, air start on off. Toggles the air start on or off, so it's easy to stall the engine in this aircraft. It just is. I don't really know why. To do with the intake, I suppose. And you may need to do an emergency air start. You don't want to have to jump to your keyboard, so I've added it here on the bottom front of the control stick. Okay, and there's just one more. Another one is drop. This is a little switch I've got on the side of the control stick. It's the last button I've got on the side of the control stick, basically, and it's drop center fuel pod. You usually will have a center fuel pod with this airplane because it's so bad on gas. And it's just easier to drop it like this than searching around for the button in the overly complicated cockpit. So double click on that, press in there. Okay, and okay. So that is the controls set up for the MiG-21. It's fairly complicated, but there is some space there. You'll probably have some switches left that you can add to other items if you so wish. Autopilot, a few switches to go to that will be quite useful if you want, but I like pressing it. Right, I hope that helped, and I'll see you later.